our party just had a heck of a run-in with Old Man Kruuk, and we're going to talk about it, so let's dig in. Welcome back, everybody. We just finished the second Cobalt Soul mission, half-baked scheme, and man, did it go different than what I was expecting. But before we get into all of that, let's talk about what went well. My party really had a good time with this heist sort of situation. They got the information they needed from Ewo, headed over, and they really had enjoyed planning out how they were going to try and figure out what Old Man Kruuk was up to, and then find out a way to get him in trouble for what he was doing. What could have been better? And this is something that isn't exactly tied into the game, but we have two players who were only able to join via Discord, and the rest of us meet in person. And it was a little bit hard to hear them and for them to hear. So I'm going to look into ways to improve that going forward. I may hook up a Bluetooth speaker or something like that so that they can be heard a little bit easier and they aren't talked over as often. Let's talk about what actually happened during this session. So we started up. We had our quick recap by the players. Actually, collectively, they are pretty good about doing a recap for us. After the recap, we went over the mission one more time just to make sure that they had all of the details. Ewo did, and they asked a couple of questions about the river district and about the bakery itself and what the Cobalt Soul knew. Ewo provided that information to them. It was about noon after they got all the information they needed, and then they decided they were going to head to the river district and kind of scope things out a little bit. So they head down to the river district. They get to the bakery, and at that point I pull open the map that's provided from the book, and they kind of scope things out a little bit. They walk around the area a little bit, and then Iris and a couple of the others decide they're going to go in and just scope out the area. So they go in, have a conversation with Old Man Kruuk, talk a little bit about baking, get to know him a little bit. He's sort of kind of friendly, not rude, but not overwhelmingly welcoming either. They have some conversation. Iris decides she's going to buy some honeyed bread. Iris used druid craft to create like a bouquet of flowers and hands it over to Old Man Kruuk, and he didn't have anything to put it in, so he headed back through the back door where they could see through the crack that there was other stuff out there. There's the little atrium area and other doors, so that's kind of curious. And he comes back with a little vase for the flowers and sets it on his desk. They head out and they decide that they're going to do a little recon on the rest of the building. So Trixie sends her owl familiar with Jimmy, who has wild shaped into a rat again, up and over the building and into the atrium. So they head down into the atrium. While all of this is going on, Dmitri and Chozen are watching guard. They're keeping an eye out for anybody that's looking suspicious or looks out of place. And Iris decides she's going to go back in and talk to Old Man Kruuk and kind of keep him distracted. Iris is talking to him about all kinds of baking techniques, and my wife is actually into cooking and baking, so it was pretty easy for her to roleplay that. It was kind of fun. While that is all going on, Jimmy heads into this little area, and he knows that one door leads to like the kitchen area that they've seen, one leads to the front area that they've seen, and then there's two other doors that they're not sure where they go. He checks them for traps and to see if they're locked. They're not trapped, but they are locked, and he's unable to pick them as a rat, and he can't find a way in as a rat. There's not enough space for him to get in, so he's like, oh crap, well that's not very helpful. Heads back up under the roof and looks for ways in through the roof. There are no ways in other than the exhausts from the kitchen that they can get in, so that's not helpful either. Eventually, Trixie decides, you know what, I'm just going to pick the lock to the back room and hope for the best. So she goes and picks the lock and is able to do so, and they get in, but a member of the consortium who happens to be in the crowd sees her do it. My party doesn't know that's what happened, but they see it happen. So they get in, and it smells awful. There's like implements all over the place for torture. There's just random odds and ends that Old Man Kruuk is trying to sell. The party's like, oh, that's not good. Trixie casts Detect Magic, and it senses an aura of evocation magic coming from this locked box. So she heads over to the lockbox, is unable to unlock it, and like, well, crap, now what do we do? Let's just leave it here for now. Let's see if we can get to the other door. So they head through the atrium, roll some stealth. One rolls really well, the other doesn't. And Old Man Kruuk starts to turn, so I have Iris make a persuasion check to keep the conversation going. Luckily, she rolled really high and continue the conversation they do. Back in the atrium area, Trixie tries to pick the lock for Old Man Kruuk's bedroom, and it's just his bedroom, nothing super exciting in there, but unable to do so. And they're like, okay, crap. Well, I think we've exhausted our time. Let's head back out. So they run back out, grab the lockbox, which is not something small, and they're like, oh, what are we going to do with it? So Chozen's like, just give it to me. Chozen grabs it, puts it on his shoulder like he owns the place, heads on out of the river district as fast as he can, and hails a carriage. Everything goes in their favor this time. Eventually, the rest of the party kind of meanders out as well, and they all meet up back at the inn they're staying in. Trixie finally is able to unlock the box, and they find the Ruidium Shortsword. So she casts Identify and is able to find out all the goodies about that. And they're like, okay, well, this is definitely something that is illicit and probably not good. However, we didn't catch him trying to sell it, so that's kind of a problem. We just know that he's got something that's not great. We haven't caught him in the act of trying to sell anything. Maybe we need to go back and see who he was trying to sell it to. And they wait till the evening, and then they head back to the river district. And when they head back, it's pretty late at night, and there's the closed sign on the door. But Jimmy, who has a fairly high passive perception, notices a Sean just kind of leaning up against a building near the bakery. My party's like, huh, that's kind of weird. And obviously they're in the red robes of the consortium, and so Trixie's like, well, I'll try and cast sleep, but is unable to make Ashan fall asleep, and Ashan notices that this happens and just smirks at the party. Eventually there's a conversation that happens. As things go with my party, Chozen grabs Ashan, grapples him, puts him in some bushes, and they have a conversation of sorts. So Ashan is not willing to give up too much information. Ashan would rather die than give up some information, but does let them know that he is trying to buy something from Old Man Kruuk and bring it back for the consortium. They asked about Aloysia and if Ashan knew who that was and if it's bringing back this item back for Aloysia, and no, it's not for Aloysia, but that's all the information Ashan is willing to provide. So Fred's like, all right, great, let's bind him, gag him, and knock him out. So they knock him out, and then they come up with this plan to try and fool Old Man Kruuk, where Trixie uses disguise self to turn into Ashan, and Dmitri grabs the robes off of Ashan because they're both gnomes and would fit, and then Chozen and Iris turn invisible, and Jimmy turns back into a rat, and they head into Old Man Kruuk's and pretend like they are here to buy the item. Well, the item isn't there to be bought, so Old Man Kruuk is upset and doing his best to seem confident in the fact that he can give them something better, and my party does their part, saying, listen, if I don't come back with this, I'm going to be in trouble. Could be worse than death trouble. You need to provide me something better. And he's like, I don't have anything here, but I can go get you something. Just give me 24 hours. And like, 24 hours isn't good enough. We need it within the next 4 hours. He's like, no, not happening. How about by morning? And they agreed to morning. So all of that happens, this conversation. They head outside, my party does, and they just lie in wait, waiting for him to go to his secret stash. So Old Man Kruuk heads out, and he leads them through a wild goose chase throughout the city where they're able to keep track. The owl familiar is very helpful in this regard. They eventually end up outside the city gates, and inside the wall of the city gates is where Old Man Kruuk keeps his secret stash, and he has a little secret combination he pushes on some of the bricks. It opens up, think like Diagon Alley in Harry Potter, and he's able to go in. There's a trapdoor that goes down, and through the trapdoor they go to find his stash. And inside the stash is a handful of items that are corrupted with Ruidium. My party is able to grab 10, I think, items, and they're going to keep a couple of them. I let them each choose one item that they could keep if they wanted. Dmitri and Jimmy were not interested in keeping anything that was sort of corrupted, but 3 members of my party were like, yeah, that sounds good. Trixie's really excited to try and experiment on the Ruidium. All of that done, they follow Old Man Kruuk, they knock him out under there. Oh, I should say, after Old Man Kruuk left, half the party knocked out Ashan and put them in the back room with the implements. From there, head back to the bakery and put Old Man Kruuk in manacles in the back room as well, and then they call the Cobalt Soul, where the Cobalt Soul comes and says, hey, that's great, I can't believe you found so much stuff. We'll get the Hands of Ward involved, and as a result, you're now full-fledged members of the library of the Cobalt Soul, and here's some perks that go along with that. We'll get a hold of the Allegiance of All Sight and see if we can't get you into the excavation site for Kael Morrow, and that is pretty much everything that happened in our last session. We had the one mission I thought for sure we'd get a little bit further than that. We didn't, and that's okay. We had a lot of fun. So if you'd like to support the channel, please like, comment, subscribe, all that fun YouTube stuff, and we will catch you in the next video. Thanks a ton for watching.